In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the characteristics of life. As we begin the unit of biology, we need to consider what constitutes something as being alive. So when we look at the characteristics of living things, there are 7 different characteristics that something needs to have in order to be considered alive. The first characteristic is growth and development. This means that a living organism must be able to change in size and shape in a process called maturation. Now, that living thing could be one cell that individually is getting larger or that is changing in shape or size, or it could be multiple cells growing to make more cells to make that living organism larger, such as we see in humans going from babies to toddlers to children and to adults. We don't just stretch the cells out that we have, we make more cells to be able to become a mature organism. The second characteristic is the acquisition or the ability to acquire energy. So this is the ability to not only get but use energy to power activities. Now that energy can come from getting nutrients as well as gas exchange. So often we think of just eating, it's eating as well as breathing, and some organisms don't eat or get nutrients the way that we do as humans. They might get their energy from sunlight, such as plants. So the ability to obtain and use energy, whether that's in the form of food or sun, in order to power their activities. The third characteristic is reproduction. And reproduction is the ability to give rise or make offspring or babies. Now this can happen both sexually or asexually. Sexually is when there are 2 parents, a mother and a father, sperm and egg joined to create the new organism. Asexually is when a cell either breaks off or splits into 2 itself to make a new organism that is identical to the original organism. This is required for the perpetuation or the continuation of a species. The fourth characteristic is responsiveness. And this is the ability to respond or change quickly based on the environment. That is the key, is responsiveness is a quick change. So we can see in this image that the plants move towards the light. Now for a plant, that is a quick movement. Humans, however, you might step on a tack and pull back your foot very quickly because the environment that you were in, something sharp was under your foot. So responsiveness is a very quick change for that organism. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is the ability to maintain a set of internal environmental conditions despite what's happening around you. So this is things like your sugar level, your body temperature, things like that. So when you get too hot, you sweat. When you get too cold, you shiver. That's your body's way of maintaining that set internal environment. So all living organisms do that to a different extent. So some simpler organisms or living things might just move away from the environment that is causing them to change their environment they don't want to be in. The next 6th characteristic is order and organization. This is the fact that everything that is alive is made up of cells. Things can be unicellular, meaning that they are one and only one cell, or they can be multicellular, where there are various levels of organization, such as multiple cells make tissues, tissues then make organs, and we go to organ systems and organisms. So they can either be very simple or very complex, but there is always some form of order and organization. The 7th characteristic is adaptation. An adaptation is a change in structure and or appearance over time to better suit changes in the environment. This is different than responsiveness because it takes a long time, many generations, often decades or hundreds of years to happen. A great example of this is the shape of birds' beaks. They will change over long periods of time to become better suited to the food in the environment. So, such as if there are nuts in the environment, they will have very short beaks that are good to crack the nuts. Birds that didn't have that appropriate beak died off because they couldn't get enough food. Therefore, that beak became an adaptation that only ones with that beak survived. Therefore, that beak was prevalent. So whether something is living or not, if it is living, it must satisfy all 7 characteristics, all of them. If one or more is missing, they're considered non-living. Even if one is missing, they're non-living. And we have to be aware of the fact that dead is not equal to non-living. Dead means that at one point in time they satisfied all the characteristics. Non-living means they never satisfied all 7. Now, since we're talking about things being living or not, and one of those characteristics is that they're made up of cells, that leads us into the cell theory. And the cell theory has 3 components to it. The first is that all living things are made up of cells. Whether that's one cell, whether that's many cells, if it's alive, it contains one or more cells. The second component is that the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. So the cell is kind of like a building block or a Lego block, in that might just be one all on its own, or there could be multiple cells put together. However, once you break something down smaller than that cell, it cannot be alive. So the cell is that basic unit that has everything needed to be alive. And the third component is that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Cells cannot just magically appear out of thin air. They came from cells that were already there.